I never thought that I would be the kind of person who would end up at Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with it. People need jobs and Walmart needs people. It's just that I always imagined myself doing something different with my life by 25. Maybe working at some trendy startup or finishing grad school. Instead, I found myself filling out an application for the overnight stocking position at Walmart, located on the outskirts of West Branch, a small town that barely registered on most maps. Life has a way of humbling you. After my mom got sick and the medical bills started piling up, my fancy graphic design degree from a state university meant nothing. What mattered was a steady paycheck and health insurance. Walmart offered both. The hiring process was surprisingly quick. I submitted my application on a Tuesday and had an interview on Thursday, and by the following Monday, I was watching orientation videos in a cramped back room that smelled like microwave popcorn and industrial cleaner. The HR lady, Brenda, was pleasant enough, if a bit robotic in her delivery of company policies and expectations. "And the night shift isn't for everyone," she said, sliding a folder across the table to me. "Hours are 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. 4 days a week. You'll be responsible for stocking shelves, organizing inventory, and the occasional customer assistance. Though honestly, we don't get many customers after midnight." I nodded, thinking about how I would need to completely flip my sleep schedule. But the extra $1.50 an hour for overnight work would make a difference in my mom's pharmaceutical costs. "One more thing," Brenda said, her voice dropping slightly as she pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't printed on Walmart letterhead like everything else had been. Instead, it was a plain white page with typed text. "These are the special protocols for overnight staff at this location. Consider them additional store policies." The paper listed 5 rules. Rule 1. All overhead lights will dim at exactly 2:13 a.m. for approximately 17 minutes. Remain in your assigned section during this time. Do not use flashlights or phone lights. Rule 2. If you hear your name called over the intercom between midnight and 5 a.m., do not respond. Continue working. If the calling persists, hum any commercial jingle that you can remember. Rule 3. The family restroom near sporting goods is off limits to all night shift employees. Use only the facilities at the front of the store. Rule 4. If you encounter a customer who appears to be sleepwalking, inform a manager immediately using Walkie Channel 3. Do not touch them or block their path. Rule 5. If you find merchandise arranged in a perfect circle anywhere in the store, do not disturb it. Radio a manager with code phrase, "Section reset needed." I read the rules twice, waiting for Brenda to crack a smile and tell me that it was all a prank they played on new hires, but her expression remained serious. "These are non-negotiable," she said firmly. "Failure to comply with these protocols is grounds for immediate termination. Do you understand?" "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked. Brenda's face hardened. "No, it is not. These rules exist for the safety of our employees and our customers. Do you understand them?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I understand." "Good. Sign at the bottom, please." I signed, feeling a flutter of unease. But I needed this job, and every workplace had its quirks, right? Maybe this was some weird corporate loss prevention strategy, or a way to deal with a particular breed of strange customer that shopped in the middle of the night. I was assigned to work with Mickey, a stocky guy in his 30s who had been with Walmart for nearly a decade. He would train me for my first week. "You read the special rules?" he asked as he showed me how to use the inventory scanner. "Yeah," I replied. "What's that all about?" "Some kind of security thing." Mickey glanced around before answering, despite the store being empty except for a few other night staff. "Just follow them, okay? Don't ask too many questions. It's better that way." I wanted to press him for more information, but his closed-off body language made it clear the topic was finished. Instead, I focused on learning the scanner system and the proper way to stock shelves. My first few nights were uneventful. The work was physically demanding but straightforward. Unbox products, check inventory, stock shelves, break down cardboard. Repeat until shift end. The store had an eerie quality to it at night. The two bright fluorescent lights, the endless expanse of empty aisles, the occasional echoing footsteps of another employee somewhere unseen. The only customers were either insomniacs grabbing late-night necessities or third-shift workers from nearby factories, stocking up during their lunch breaks. They rarely needed help, which suited me fine. I was still learning where everything was located at in the store. It wasn't until my fourth night that I experienced the first rule in action. I was in the cereal aisle methodically arranging boxes of Cheerios when the lights above me dimmed substantially. The sudden change made me jump, nearly dropping the box in my hands. I glanced at my watch. 2:13 exactly. My first instinct was to pull out my phone for light, but Mickey's voice echoed in my head. Just follow them, okay? I stood frozen, barely able to make out the shapes of the cereal boxes. The entire store had taken on a twilight quality. Not pitch black, but dim enough that details were difficult to discern. I decided to continue working by feel, keeping my movement slow and measured. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming down the main aisle that intersected with mine. They had an odd cadence, like somebody dragging one foot slightly. I held my breath, listening as the footsteps grew closer. They stopped at the end of my aisle. I couldn't see clearly in the dim light, but I could make out a tall figure standing there. It appeared to be wearing the standard Walmart vest, but something was off about its proportions. The shoulders too broad, the head too small. The figure stood motionless. I remained equally still, my heart hammering in my chest. After what seemed like an eternity, the figure turned and continued down the main aisle, the dragging footsteps sound fading away. I released my breath, realizing that I had been holding it so long that my lungs burned. Exactly 17 minutes after they had dimmed, the lights returned to full brightness. I blinked at the sudden illumination, quickly looking around. There was no sign of the figure that I had seen and no other employees nearby. When my shift ended, I caught up with Mickey in the break room. Hey, about my last shift, the lights dimming at 2:13, I said quietly. I saw someone or something. Mickey immediately tensed. We don't talk about that, he replied, voice barely above a whisper. Just follow the rules, that's all you need to know. But, listen, he cut me off, leaning in. Everyone who works here has seen things, weird things. But the ones who make it are the ones who just follow the rules and mind their own business. Understood? I nodded, troubled by his reaction. As I was leaving, he called after me. Oh, and Jamie, start bringing headphones. Music helps during that time. Just don't use the light on your phone. Over the next few weeks, I settled into the routine of night shift work. My body adjusted to sleeping during the day and I became more efficient at stocking. The rules remained a constant background presence in my mind, but nothing unusual happened. Until the intercom incident. It was a slow Tuesday night. We had a light truck delivery, so most of us had finished our stocking early and moved on to zoning, the process of pulling products to the front of shelves and making everything look neat and organized. I was in the health and beauty section, methodically arranging bottles of shampoo when the intercom crackled to life. Jamie. A woman's voice called, sweet and melodic. Jamie, could you please come to the service desk? Jamie, to the service desk, please. I froze, remembering Rule 2. The store's customer service desk closed at 10 p.m. when the night shift began. There shouldn't be anybody there to call for me. I continued arranging shampoo bottles, trying to ignore the summons, but my hands had begun to shake. 30 seconds later, the intercom crackled again.
Jamie,
the voice said, no longer sweet but sharper, more insistent.
You're needed urgently at the service desk. Jamie to the service desk, now, please.
I hummed the first commercial jingle that came to mind. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, under my breath, focusing intently on the bottles in front of me.
Jamie.
The third call made me jump. The voice had changed completely, dropping several octaves into a growl that didn't sound human at all. The intercom system emitted a high-pitched whine of feedback. I hummed louder, hands trembling so badly now that I knocked over a row of conditioner bottles. The jingle wasn't working, and so I switched to another, that old Meow Mix commercial, humming more forcefully. A hand touched my shoulder and I nearly screamed. Hey, you good? It was Daryl, one of the other Night Stalkers. You're humming pretty loud. Did you hear that? On the intercom? I asked, my voice unsteady. Daryl's expression shifted subtly. Hear what? Somebody called my name 3 times. He glanced around and then lowered his voice. Huh, first time. I nodded. It happens to everyone eventually. It's different for each person. Some hear family members, some hear bosses from old jobs. The important thing is you didn't answer or go to the service desk. What happens if I do? I couldn't help asking. Daryl shook his head. A girl named Monica found out about 6 months before you started. She's not with us anymore. She quit. His expression darkened. Something like that. After that shift, I couldn't sleep despite the blackout curtains in my apartment. I kept hearing that final growling version of my name whenever I closed my eyes. Instead of forcing sleep, I opened my laptop and searched for information about the Walmart that I worked at. Most of the results were benign. Job postings, store hours, the occasional complaint about service on Yelp or Google. But on the 3rd page of results, I found a link to a local news article from 3 years ago. Missing Walmart employee case remains unsolved. The article was brief, describing how a night shift employee named Jack Alexander had disappeared during his shift. Security cameras showed him entering the family restroom near Sporting Goods at approximately 3:15, but there was no footage of him exiting. Police had found no signs of foul play and the case remained open but inactive due to the lack of evidence. The family restroom near Sporting Goods. Rule 3. I searched for more information about Monica, the employee that Daryl had mentioned, but I found nothing. Expanding my search to include missing persons in West Branch over the past year yielded no results for anybody by that name. I was about to give up when I noticed a community forum for local residents and a thread about local job opportunities. I found a comment from a user named Big Mama 82. Wow, what a name. Avoid the night shift at the Walmart on Route 75. My daughter worked there for 2 months and started having severe psychological issues. She claimed that the store was different at night and that something was hunting the employees. She quit after having a complete breakdown. It's been nearly a year of therapy and medication and she still wakes up screaming about the lights going out in circles on the floor. I closed my laptop, my mind racing. What exactly was going on at that Walmart? Were the rules actually protecting us from something, and if so, what? The next night at work, I tried to act normal despite my growing anxiety. I noticed things that I hadn't before. How the night managers always worked in pairs, never alone. How certain sections of the store had small, inconspicuous symbols drawn at the corners of the floor tiles. How everyone wore a small pin on their vest that wasn't standard Walmart issue, a tiny blue star. During our break, I cornered Mickey in the smoking area outside the employee entrance. Tell me what's really going on here, I demanded. I found articles about missing employees, posts about people having breakdowns. This isn't normal. Mickey took a long drag of his cigarette, considering me carefully. How long have you been here now? A month? 5 weeks? He nodded. And you've always followed the rules? Of course. You're doing better than most. Look, this location has issues. Been that way since they built it. What do you mean, since they built it? Mickey dropped his cigarette, crushing it under his boot. You ever wonder why this place is so far from the center of town? Why they put a Walmart in the edge of that forest instead of closer to the highway exit where all the other retail is? I hadn't, but now I was curious. This land was cheap because nobody would develop it. Local tribes wouldn't go near it. Early settlers had avoided it. Even the logging companies skipped this patch when they cleared most of the surrounding forest. Why? Old stories, bad ground, thin places, he shrugged. Whatever you want to call it, all I know is corporate got a good deal, ignored the warnings, and now we have the rules. So these rules, they keep us safe from what exactly? Mickey fidgeted with his blue star pen. You ask too many questions, Jamie. That's how people get into trouble. Just follow the rules, collect your paycheck, and try not to think too much about the rest. That shift, I did the exact opposite, and I couldn't stop thinking about Mickey's warning as I restocked the dairy section. The coolers hummed monotonously, a sound that usually faded into background noise, but tonight it seemed ominous, almost like a distant whispering. At 1:45, Diane, one of the night managers, approached me with unusual urgency. We need extra hands in the garden center, she said, already turning to walk away. Follow me. The garden center was on the far side of the store, partially outdoors but enclosed with high fencing and a greenhouse-style roof. At night it was closed to customers, the doors to the exterior locked and alarmed. When we arrived, I saw why Diane needed help. In the center of the concrete floor, dozens of potted plants had been arranged in a perfect circle. Soil from several broken pots was scattered around, and in the center of the circle sat a single garden gnome figurine facing the eastern fence. Section reset needed in the garden center. Within minutes, the other night manager, Leonard, arrived with a strange metal box. He wore thick gloves as he opened it, revealing what looked like coarse salt mixed with dried herbs. Stand back, Leonard instructed, walking slowly around the circle of plants, sprinkling the mixture just outside its perimeter. Once complete, he placed a small white candle at 4 points around the circle, aligned with a compass's directions. I watched in disbelief as he lit each candle and then began speaking in a language that I didn't recognize, something guttural and ancient sounding. Diane noticed my expression. First circle, she asked quietly. I nodded, unable to form words. Somebody has to reset it before dawn or things get worse. Much worse, she explained. Who arranged the plants like this? I finally managed to ask. Diane's expression was grim. Not who, what? After Leonard finished up with the strange ritual, he and Diane carefully dismantled the circle, making sure not to disturb the salt mixture. The plants were returned to their proper places, the broken pots and spilled soil cleaned up. The gnome figurine was placed in Leonard's metal box. We'll need to monitor this section closely for the next few nights, Diane told me. If you're assigned here, be extra vigilant and report anything unusual immediately. What should I be looking for? I asked. Merchandise moving on its own, cold spots, the smell of wet earth even though nothing's been watered. She hesitated and then added, and if you hear digging sounds from beyond the fence, radio immediately and leave the area. That night it marked a turning point. It became impossible to pretend that this was just a normal job with some crazy policies. Something was happening here, something beyond ordinary explanation. I started paying closer attention to my colleagues. noting their behaviors and reactions. Some, like Mickey, seemed resigned to the strangeness, accepting it as a part of the job. Others displayed various coping mechanisms. Trisha from Housewares wore religious symbols from at least 5 different faiths around her neck. Dennis from Electronics muttered protection prayers under his breath whenever he had to walk through certain sections alone. Lacey from Health and Beauty would only communicate through written notes between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., claiming they can't track what you don't say out loud. I began keeping a journal, documenting these strange occurrences. Night 37. Lights dimmed at 2:13 as usual. Heard dragging footsteps again, but also a soft clicking sound, like fingernails on tile. Temperature in frozen foods dropped to near zero, causing frost to form on the outside of the freezer doors. Night 39. Found a perfect circle of cereal boxes in aisle 7. Followed protocol and called for reset. Leonard responded, performed the usual ritual. I noticed that he used different colored candles this time, black instead of white. Night 42. Someone called my name over the intercom again. It was a female voice, different from last time. When I didn't respond, I heard something that sounded like a child crying from the direction of the garden center. Night 45. The lights didn't come back on after the 17 minutes. Extended darkness lasted for an additional 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Multiple footsteps could be heard throughout the store. Diane was on walkie-talkie instructing everyone to stay perfectly still and close your eyes. I knew that I should quit. I mean, any rational person would have walked out after experiencing even a fraction of what I had witnessed. But the truth was, I couldn't afford to. My mother's condition had worsened, requiring more expensive treatments. The health insurance from Walmart was keeping her alive, and perversely, they had started giving me more hours and even a small promotion to night lead in grocery, which came with a $1 raise. It was as if the store, or whatever controlled it, was rewarding me for my compliance. 2 months into my employment, I was assigned to train a new hire named Chris. He was a college student taking a semester off, jovial and talkative. I liked him immediately, which made what had happened even worse. "So what's with the weird rules they gave us?" he asked as I showed him how to stock the frozen section. "Is it some kind of hazing thing?" "No," I said firmly. "Those rules are serious. You need to follow them exactly." Chris laughed. "Oh, come on, man. Don't use the bathroom by the sporting goods section. Don't answer if somebody calls your name. It sounds stupid to me." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him directly. "Listen to me carefully. This isn't a joke. People have vanished from this store. Bad things happen when the rules are broken." Something in my expression must have convinced him because his smile faded. "Oh, for real? What kind of bad things?" "I don't know everything," I admitted. "Just promise me that you'll follow them, okay?" He nodded, suddenly serious. "Okay, yeah, I promise." We continued working and Chris seemed to take my warning to heart. At 2:13, when the lights dimmed, he followed my lead, standing still and silent in our aisle. I could sense his fear, but he remained composed until the lights had returned. "What was that all about?" he whispered afterward. "I don't know, but we're safe if we follow the rules." Everything went smoothly until about 4 a.m. when Chris mentioned needing to use the restroom. "Hey, use the ones at the front," I reminded him. Yeah, I remember," he said, heading toward the front of the store. I continued working, but after 15 minutes I realized that Chris hadn't made it back. A knot formed in my stomach. I tried to reassure myself maybe he had gotten distracted talking to another employee, or perhaps Diane had given him something to do. I radioed for him. No response. I walked to the front restrooms. Empty. A terrible suspicion grew within me. I made my way across the store toward sporting goods. The family restroom door was closed, the occupied sign showing red. Chris? I called, knocking gently. Are you in there? No answer. I tried the handle. It was locked. Heart racing, I radioed for a manager. Possible Rule 3 violation, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Family restroom by Sporting Goods. Diane and Leonard arrived within minutes, keys in hand and expressions grim. How long? Leonard asked. At least 20 minutes, I replied. They traded glances. Too long, Diane murmured. Leonard unlocked the door with his master key, but before opening it, he turned to me. Wait here, don't come in no matter what you hear, understand? I nodded, throat too dry to speak. They entered the restroom, closing the door behind them. At first, there was silence, and then I heard muffled voices, Leonard's deep tones speaking those strange words again, Diane responding in kind. A sudden crash made me jump, followed by what sounded like rushing water. And then came the screaming. It wasn't Chris's voice, it wasn't human at all. A high, keening wail that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. I covered my ears, but it did little to block the terrible sound. After what seemed like an eternity, silence fell. The door opened and Leonard emerged alone, his Walmart vest torn and soaking wet. Dark liquid that didn't look like water dripped from his sleeves. Where's Diane? I asked. Where's Chris? Leonard's eyes were vacant and shell-shocked. Diane is handling it. The boy crossed over. We couldn't bring him back. What does that mean? What happened to him? He's gone, Leonard said flatly. We'll tell his family he never showed up for his shift. The company will take care of it. Take care of it? We need to call the police, I insisted. Leonard grabbed my arm, his wet fingers leaving burning cold marks on my skin. Hey, listen carefully, there's nothing the police can do. Chris is somewhere else now. Somewhere that they can't reach. Somewhere we can't reach. I don't understand. You don't need to understand, you just need to follow the rules. He released my arm. Go home, your shift is over. Don't come back until tomorrow night. But that's an order. And Jamie, don't write this in your little journal. Some things shouldn't be recorded. I stared at him, shocked that he knew about my private journal. He smiled grimly. We see more than you think. Now go home. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the local library, which opened at around 9, and I used their computers to research the history of the land where Walmart was built. Most of the information was mundane. Property records showing the land had been sold to Walmart's parent company 15 years ago by a local farming family. Before that, it had been undeveloped for as long as records exist. But in the Historical Society's archives, I found references to the area in settlers' journals from the 1840s. They called it the hollow ground or the waiting place, and they avoided it entirely. One account described a trapper who had set up camp there disappearing, leaving behind only a perfect circle of his possessions around a cold fire pit. Indigenous histories were harder to find, but I discovered an interview with a local tribal elder from the 1970s who had mentioned the area as a thin ground, a place where the other side presses close, and spoke of ancient protocols to keep those who wait below from crossing over. By the time I left the library, my hands were shaking. The connections were too strong to ignore. The rules at Walmart weren't arbitrary. They were a modernized version of old protections against whatever existed in that place. I really should have quit then. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I still needed the money, and more than that, I needed answers. That night, I returned to work. Chris's disappearance had been handled exactly as Leonard had said. The official story was that he had never shown up for his shift and that he was marked as a no-call, no-show in the system. When I asked other employees about him, they either didn't remember him or pretended not to. Only Mickey acknowledged what had happened. "You were training him, right?" he asked during our break. "The kid who used the wrong bathroom." I nodded, relieved that somebody else remembered. "That's how it goes sometimes," Mickey said, his voice heavy with resignation. "The rules are there for a reason." "But what happened to him?" I pressed. "Leonard said that he crossed over. What does that mean?" Mickey was silent for a long moment. "You ever hear of liminal spaces? Thresholds between places?" I nodded. "This store, this whole lot is built on a place like that, a threshold. The rules keep us on this side. Break them and you might end up on the other side." "The other side of what?" "I don't know, man, and I don't want to know. Why do you ask so many questions?" He tapped his blue star pin. "Have the managers given you one of these yet?" I shook my head. They will soon. It's kind of a protection, an old symbol. Means that you're a part of the knowing ones." "The what?" "Those who know and respect the rules. The ones who keep the balance." He glanced at the clock on the break room wall. "Oh, break's almost over. Just be careful. I think you're already in deeper than you realize." Mickey was right. The next night, Leonard called me into the management office and presented me with a small blue star pen. "You've been with us for 3 months now. You've seen things and you've followed the rules. It's time you became a full member of the night team." The pin looked ordinary enough, a 5-pointed star enameled in blue metal. But when I held it, it felt unusually heavy and cold to the touch. "What exactly does this mean?" I asked as I fastened it to my vest. "It means you're one of us now," Leonard replied. "It means you have certain responsibilities and certain protections." "From what?" Leonard's eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, from the consequences of working here. The pin marks you as belonging to this side. As long as you wear it while you're in the store, you'll be less noticeable to what dwells beyond the threshold. And if I don't wear it, well then you're on your own." He slid a folder across the desk. "These are your new duties. Study them carefully." The folder contained a more detailed version of the rules, plus some additional protocols. Extended Protocol 1. During light dimming at 2:13 to 2:30 a.m., employees must perform the acknowledgement. Stand still, eyes forward, and silently recite. "I see only what is mine to see. I hear only what is mine to hear. I remain on this side of the veil." Extended Protocol 2. Blue star pins must be worn at all times while on the premises. If a pin is lost, exit the building immediately and report to management next shift. Extended Protocol 3. If a customer appears with completely black eyes or is speaking in multiple overlapping voices, direct them to the garden center and immediately alert management with code phrase, "Special Assistance in Garden." Extended Protocol 4. Should you observe any employee violating the rules, do not intervene directly. Report to management immediately. Do not discuss the violation with the employee in question. Extended Protocol 5. In the event of a full threshold breach, announced as code white over the intercom, proceed immediately to the center of the store and form a circle with the other Blue Star employees. Remain in position until the all clear is given. I look up from the papers, my mouth dry. Has there ever been a full threshold breach? Leonard nodded grimly. And twice in the 15 years that this store has been open. Both times we contained it. Barely. Contained what? You don't want to know those details, Jamie. Trust me on that. He tapped the folder. Memorize these. Your life depends on it. And now that you're a Blue Star, you'll be expected to help with resets when needed. The circles, I said, like the plants in the garden center. Yes, among other things. Being a Blue Star employee changed things. Other night shift workers treated me differently, with a mixture of respect and wariness. I was included in conversations that would stop when non-Blue Star employees approached. Diane and Leonard assigned me to more sensitive areas of the store, places where incidents happened more often. I learned that certain sections were more problematic than others. Garden Center was the worst, being the closest to the exterior of the building and the forest beyond. Sporting goods with its hunting equipment and weapons was another hotspot. The family restroom was positioned as a confluence of what Leonard called threshold lines, invisible boundaries where the barrier between our world and whatever was on the other side grew thin. The work became more than just stocking shelves. I was taught how to recognize signs of threshold thinning, unexpected cold spots, electronic malfunctions, the smell of ozone or wet earth, merchandise that rearranged itself when nobody was looking. I learned to perform these minor resets, small rituals involving salt, iron filings, and specific words to strengthen the barrier when minor breaches occurred. These happened several times a week, usually small manifestations like products arranged in patterns or strange writing appearing on bathroom mirrors. All the while, I kept thinking about Chris and the others who had disappeared. Were they dead? Or were they somewhere else, as Leonard had suggested? Was there any way to bring them back? I began researching more intensely during my off hours, diving into books about liminal spaces, threshold theory, and ancient barrier rituals. I found striking similarities between the protocols that we followed at Walmart and protected practices from dozens of cultures throughout history. My mother had noticed the change in me. "You look exhausted, honey," she said during one of my visits to her at the care facility. "Is that job working you too hard?" "I'm good, Mom," I lied. "Just adjusting to the night schedule is all." She took my hand, her fingers frail but her grip surprisingly strong. "No, there's something different about you. Something in your eyes." She leaned closer. "You're seeing things, aren't you? Things that shouldn't be there." My breath caught. What? What do you mean?" She sighed, a sound heavy with secrets. "Oh, the Mercerland. That's where you're working at, isn't it? That Walmart." "You know about the Mercer property?" I asked, shocked. "Oh, everybody from the old families know," she replied. "Your grandmother used to tell stories about the hollow ground, about the things that would happen there." "Why didn't you say anything when I took the job?" "Oh, I hope the stories were just that. Stories." She looked away. "And we needed the insurance." "Mom, people have disappeared there. Something is really happening at that store." "The veil is thin in that place," she murmured. "Always has been. That's why the rituals are important. The rules." "How do you know about those?" I was stunned. "Not the specific ones that they use now, but every generation had them. Ways to stay safe on that land." She squeezed my hand. "Jamie, listen to me. Be careful, don't get pulled in too deep. Those who spend too much time guarding the threshold eventually become a part of it." My mother's warning haunted me, but I couldn't walk away. Not just because of the financial necessity, but because I had become invested in understanding what was happening there. And if I'm being honest, I had started to feel a sense of purpose in my role as a guardian of sorts. A few nights later, I experienced my first major incident. It was just after 3 a.m. and I was working in the seasonal section, which had been converted for Halloween. Plastic skeletons, bags of candy, and costume displays filled the area, a celebration of the macabre that felt oddly trivial given what I now knew about real terror. I was arranging a display of pumpkin-scented candles when I felt a sudden drop in temperature. My breath fogged in front of me despite the store's heating system running at full blast. The scent of wet earth and decaying leaves filled the air. Following protocol, I reached for my walkie-talkie to report the warning signs of a threshold thinning. Before I could press the talk button, however, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A child's laugh, high and tinkling, coming from the next aisle over. We didn't allow children in the store after 10 p.m. No exceptions. I moved cautiously to the end of my aisle and peered around the corner. The Halloween costume section was dimly lit, the display of masks and makeup kits creating unsettling shadows. At first, I saw nothing off, but then I spotted her, a small girl perhaps 7 or 8 years old, standing with her back to me. She wore what looked like an old-fashioned nightgown, yellowed with age. Her hair hung in long dark tangles down her back. "Hello?" I called softly, remembering protocol. Children weren't explicitly mentioned in the rules, but my instincts screamed danger. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't respond. She was staring at a display of Halloween masks, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. I raised my walkie-talkie, intending to call for a manager when the girl spoke. "They don't look real," she said, her voice sounding very strange, as if coming from much farther away than a few yards between us. "Not like the faces below." My finger hovered over the call button. "What faces?" I asked, buying time while trying to remember if there was a specific code phrase for child apparitions. She began to turn slowly, jerkily, like a wind-up doll with damaged gears. "Would you like to see? They're waiting for more. Always waiting for more." I pressed the button. "Code blue and Halloween, aisle 14. I said, using the general emergency phrase when unsure of the specific protocol. As the girl continued her unnatural turning motion, I caught a glimpse of her profile. Where her face should have been was only a smooth, blank surface of skin, featureless except for a single vertical line where a mouth might be. I backed away, my training momentarily forgotten in the face of pure terror. The girl, or whatever was wearing the shape of a girl, continued rotating until she faced me fully. The line where her mouth should be split open, widening impossibly into a gaping maw that stretched from where her hairline would be down to where her chin should end. From that cavernous opening came the child's laugh again, but it doubled and tripled upon itself, as if multiple children were laughing in imperfect unison. "Jamie," the voices said together. "We've been waiting for you. Don't you want to follow the rules? Rule number 6. When the children call, you must answer." "That's not one of the rules," I said, continuing to back away. "There are only 5 rules." The thing's head tilted even further, nearly touching its shoulder at an impossible angle. "On your side, perhaps." Leonard appeared beside me so suddenly that I almost screamed. He grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight, and thrust a small object into my hand, a tiny cloth bag filled with blue string. "Throw it," he commanded. "Now." I hurled the bag toward the child. When it hit the floor at the creature's feet, there was a sound like sizzling bacon and a flash of pale blue light. The temperature in the aisle instantly rose, and the smell of earth was replaced by the acrid scent of burnt hair. The child thing convulsed once, the gaping mouth snapping shut, and then between one blink and the next it was gone, leaving only a small, perfect circle of frost on the linoleum floor where it had stood. What was that thing? Leonard's face was grim. "A scout. They send them through sometimes, testing for weakness." He pulled out a small vial of what looked like salt and carefully poured it in a circle around the frost mark. "This is the 3rd one this month. The barrier is wearing thin." "What did you give me to throw?" "Iron filings, graveyard dirt, and St. John's wort. It's an old remedy." He finished the salt circle and straightened up. "Hey, you did well. Not everyone keeps their wits when facing their first manifestation." "It knew my name," I said, still shaken. Leonard nodded solemnly. "Yeah, they always do. It's part of how they try to establish connection. Use your name, make it personal. Try to add new rules that you'll follow without thinking. He patted his blue star pen. This helps protect against their influence, but not completely. The child said something about faces below. What was that about? Leonard hesitated. There are things that you're not ready to know yet, Jamie. Some knowledge is dangerous until you've been properly prepared. I think I deserve to know what I'm facing, I insisted, especially if it knows my name. He sighed heavily. Fine, but not here. Meet me in the manager's office after we finish cleanup. Leonard was waiting for me when I arrived at the small office tucked behind the customer service desk. The room was different than I had remembered it from my initial interview. Symbols had been painted on the walls in dark blue, and a large map of the store was spread across the desk, marked with dozens of small red X's. Sit, Leonard said, gesturing to the chair across from him. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Not all blue stars are cleared for this level of information. I sat, noting the serious shift in his demeanor. Usually stoic, Leonard now appeared actually troubled. This store, this entire structure was built as a containment mechanism. He began. Not just a store, Walmart corporate knows what this land is, what it contains. And that's a threshold, right? Yes, a weak point between worlds. He pointed to the map. These X mark the spot where the barrier is the thinnest. You've noticed that they cluster in certain areas, the garden center, sporting goods, the family restroom. I nodded. What you may not have realized is that they form a pattern. He traced lines connecting the X's. A circle with 5 points of particular weakness. I stared at the resulting pentagram shape, like a 5-pointed star. Exactly like the pins that we wear. The symbol serves as both a warning and protection. Leonard leaned back. The entity that spoke to you tonight is one of the many that exist on the other side. They want to cross over. To them, our world is nourishing. So the rules keep them from crossing. The rules keep us from inadvertently helping them cross. Each one addresses a specific vulnerability in the barrier. He ticked them off on his fingers. The dimming lights at 2:13. That's when the barrier naturally thins and they can see us better. We stay still and quiet to avoid drawing attention. And the names over the intercom. They can mimic voices and use these storage systems to call to us. Answering it acknowledges them, creates a connection that they can use to pull you partially across. The bathroom by sporting goods. It's positioned at a major weak point. Plus water, running water creates conduits that they can use. That's why we don't use that restroom. The sleepwalking customers. Leonard's expression darkened. Not customers at all. They're people who have been partially pulled across. Their consciousness is already on the other side, but their bodies remain here, caught between worlds. We don't interfere because touching them could pull you over too. And the circles of merchandise. They're attempts at creating portals. Circles have power. They're using our own products to create doorways. When we find them, we have to perform the reset ritual to close the potential opening before it stabilizes. I thought about this information, connecting it with my own experiences and research. The child thing had mentioned faces below. What did that mean? Leonard was silent for a long moment. The entities on the other side, they collect. Trophies, I suppose you could say. Faces are very prized. A chill ran through me as I thought of the featureless child with its gaping maw. From the people who disappear, like Chris. Yes. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The company knows the risks. It's why the pay and benefits are so good. It's why certain incidents are handled internally. This is insane, I said. Why not close the store, demolish it? Because the threshold would remain. Without the containment measures we have in place, it would grow, it would spread. The protocols don't just protect us, they protect everybody in West Branch. So we're the sacrificial lambs. I asked bitterly. No, we're the Guardians. There's a difference in that. Leonard opened his desk drawer and removed an old leather-bound book. It's time you learn the deeper protocols, the ones that can save you if the worst happens. He placed the book in front of me. Its cover was unmarked, but the leather felt unusually warm to the touch, almost like skin. Study this, memorize the words and symbols. If you're ever caught in a full breach, this knowledge might be the only thing that brings you back. I took the book, feeling its weight, heavier than its size had suggested. Has anybody ever come back after being taken? Leonard's silence was answer enough. The book that Leonard gave me contained knowledge that both fascinated and terrified me. Written in multiple hands across generations, it documented the history of the hollow ground and the various entities that sought passage through the threshold. There were detailed accounts of manifestations dating back to the 1800s, rituals for strengthening the barrier, and emergency protocols for different types of breaches. Some pages contained symbols that hurt my eyes to look at directly, while others featured diagrams of the land with notations in languages that I couldn't identify. The most disturbing section detailed what happened to those who had crossed over, willingly or not. According to the book, they didn't simply die. They were absorbed, their consciousness and physical forms separated and repurposed. The entities on the other side couldn't create their own bodies to cross over, so they needed ours. I read the book during my off hours, trying to process the nightmare reality that I had stumbled into. My work performance suffered as I struggled with sleep deprivation and constant anxiety. The only consolation was that my mother's treatments were working. She was showing signs of improvement, which meant my sacrifice was at least accomplishing something good. One afternoon, I awoke from a fitful sleep to find a text message from Diane. Emergency meeting tonight, all blue stars at 9 p.m. before shift. I arrived at the store an hour early, finding the parking lot unusually empty except for employee vehicles. The night crew was gathered in the training room, all 18 Blue Star members looking tense and uncertain. Leonard and Diane stood at the front, their expressions grave. Behind them was a whiteboard covered with symbols from the book, along with a timeline of some sort. Thank you all for coming, Leonard began once everybody had settled. We're facing an unprecedented situation. The barrier has been weakening steadily for months, and our standard measures aren't stabilizing it anymore. Murmurs spread through the room. Diane raised her hand for silence. We've recorded 17 minor breaches in the past week alone, she continued. The corporate containment team has analyzed the data and believes we're approaching a potential full threshold breach. The room went quiet. I felt Mickey tense beside me. When? Somebody asked. Tomorrow night, October 31st. Of course, Halloween. The day when the veil between worlds was traditionally the thinnest. We'll be implementing Emergency Protocol Omega, Diane said, pointing to a complex symbol on the whiteboard. Every blue star will be positioned at strategic points throughout the store. The building will be closed to customers from 8 p.m. onward, under the pretense of inventory. What about non-Blue Star employees? I asked. They've been given the night off, Leonard answered. This operation involves only initiated guardians. He distributed maps showing our assigned positions. I was placed in sporting goods near the family restroom, one of the major weak points. Each of you will maintain your position regardless of what you see or hear, Diane instructed. You'll be provided with barrier kits containing salt, iron, and other necessities. Under no circumstances are you to leave your assigned area until the all clear is given. And if the barrier fails completely, Mickey asked the question that everybody was thinking. Leonard's face was grim. Then we implement the final containment. The building has been prepared since its construction for this possibility. Prepared how? I asked. There are charges placed at structural points throughout the foundation, Diane said matter-of-factly. In the event of a complete breach, the entire building will be collapsed inward, sealing the threshold with concrete and steel. Shocked silence followed her statement. With us inside, somebody finally asked. Leonard nodded. If it comes to that, yes. Better 18 souls than the thousands who would be taken if the threshold entities established a permanent foothold in our world. I looked around the room, seeing the same realization dawn on every face. We weren't just night stalkers or sales associates. We were the last line of defense in a war that most people didn't even know was being fought. And we might not survive our next shift. I spent what might be my last day putting my affairs in order as best I could. I visited my mother, telling her that I loved her without revealing what was happening. I wrote letters to the few friends I had, vague explanations that wouldn't reveal the truth but might provide some closure. I made sure that my rent was paid through the end of the month. As the sun set, I drove to the Walmart one last time. The parking lot was empty except for the employee vehicles, the store's exterior lights dimmer than usual. A sign on the door read, "Closed for inventory" in large red letters. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Blue Star employees moved purposefully, setting up barrier materials at their assigned positions. Leonard and Diane were distributing small cloth bags similar to the one that had banished the child entity. Iron fillings, silver shavings, salt and herbs. Leonard explained as he handed me mine. Last resort if something manifests directly in your zone. Use it only if absolutely necessary. We have a limited supply. In addition to the bag, I received a small blue candle, a vial of clear liquid that smelled strongly of sage, and a piece of paper with words written in that strange language. Memorize these, Diane instructed. If the primary barrier fails, these words will be your personal protection. Speak them while visualizing a shield of blue light surrounding you. How will we know if the barrier is failing? I asked. You'll know, she replied grimly. Trust me. At exactly 11:30, we all took our positions. I stood in my assigned spot near the family restroom, the barrier materials arranged in a small semicircle before me. From here, I could see down several aisles but not to the other Blue Star positions. We were intentionally spaced to cover maximum area. At 11:45, the store's regular lighting shut off, replaced by emergency lights that cast everything in a dim blue glow. Over the intercom, Leonard's voice recited words from the book, a strengthening ritual that all of us silently joined, touching our Blue Star pins as we did. Midnight approached. I checked my watch nervously, wondering what exactly would happen when the clock struck 12 on Halloween night in a store built on a threshold between worlds. The answer came with a violent shudder that ran through the entire building. The floor beneath me vibrated, shelves rattling as products tumbled down. The emergency lights flickered wildly, and for a moment, I thought that I saw something in the flashes of darkness, shapes moving in the spaces where the light couldn't make it. My walkie-talkie crackled.
Hold positions.
Leonard's voice commanded.
The first barrier is holding.
The shaking subsided, but the air had changed. It felt heavier, charged with static electricity that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The smell of wet earth and decay filled the store, stronger than I had ever experienced it before. And then came the whispers. Hundreds of them overlapping, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I couldn't make out words, just a constant serration that made my teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. Something moved at the periphery of my sight, a dark shape sliding along the floor of the aisle to my left. When I turned to look directly at it, it vanished, only to reappear in another spot when I looked away. My walkie-talkie crackled again.
Zone 7 reporting manifestation.
Came Mickey's tense voice.
Multiple shadow forms in the garden center. Zone 4 manifestation confirmed.
Another voice added.
Temperature dropping rapidly in electronics. Maintain the barrier protocols.
Diane responded.
Do not engage unless they enter your immediate area.
I watched as the shadows grew bolder, sliding closer, taking more defined shape with each passing minute. They reminded me of people, or rather the negative space where people should be. Darkness given form and purpose. At 12:17, the first scream came over the walkie-talkie.
They're in through Zone 9. There.
The transmission cut off abruptly.
Zone 9 report.
Leonard demanded, but silence answered him. Another voice broke in, panicked.
Something's happening to the floor in housewares. Oh God, it's opening up.
I wanted desperately to see what was happening in other parts of the store, but I knew leaving my position would weaken the overall barrier. I stood firm, watching as the shadows in my section grew more numerous and substantial. At 12:30, everything changed. The emergency lights failed completely, plunging the store into absolute darkness. In that moment of blindness, I felt something brush against my face. Cold, damp, like wet leather. I jerked back, nearly falling, and I fumbled for my flashlight despite the rules about using lights. Before I could turn it on, the emergency lights flickered back to life, revealing what was in front of me. The floor in the center of my zone had changed. The standard white tiles were now a deep, unnatural black that didn't reflect light. And worse, the blackness seemed to have depth, as if I was looking down into an abyss rather than at a solid floor. And from that darkness, something was emerging. It rose slowly, a mass of shifting shapes that never quite settled into a single form. One moment it appeared human-like, and the next it was a writhing collection of limbs and appendages that made no sense. The only constant was the faces, dozens of them pressing outwards from the mass like masks embedded in clay. Their expressions frozen in terror or pain. With sick horror, I recognized one of them. Chris, his eyes wide and mouth open in a silent scream. The entity continued rising, more and more of it emerging from the impossible depth in the floor. As it towered over me, reaching nearly to the ceiling, I heard Leonard's voice over the walkie-talkie, calm but urgent.
Full breach confirmed. Initiate final containment. I repeat, initiate final containment.
This was it. The building would be collapsed, sealing us in with these things forever. But before I could process my imminent doom, I heard another sound. My mother's voice, clear as day, cutting through the chaos. Jamie, remember what I told you about the threshold? It wasn't coming from the intercom or my walkie-talkie. It seemed to be speaking directly into my mind. What had she told me? That those who guard the threshold eventually become a part of it. But she had said something else. Something about the old families and their knowledge. The massive entity before me extended what might have been an arm, ending in something between a hand and a claw. As it reached for me, I saw the blue star pin glowing with an intense light, holding the appendage at bay. But the protection was failing, the light dimming as the creature pressed forward. The hollow ground doesn't just hate Jamie, it connects. Those caught between can always find their way home if they remember one thing. Thresholds work both ways. That's it. If they could come through to our side then. Acting on instinct and desperate hope, I grabbed my barrier supplies and threw them not at the entity but into the black depth in the floor. I followed with the blue candle lit by the electric blue light of my fading pen. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The blackness in the floor pulsed and the creature before me let out a sound that defied description. Part scream, part thunderclap, part the rending of reality itself. The pull was instant and overwhelming. The entity began to be dragged back toward the opening, its form distorting as it struggled against the suction. All around the store I could hear similar sounds as the breach began to reverse. But I was being pulled too. My feet slid on the smooth floor as the threshold's gravity seized me. I grabbed a shelf, holding on with all my strength as the vortex tried to claim me. Jamie! Leonard appeared at the end of the aisle, fear on his face as he saw what was happening. "Let go of the shelf. The final containment has been triggered. You only have seconds to get out." The building had begun to shake violently, not from the breach but from the charges placed in the foundation. The collapse was beginning. The entity made a final desperate lunge toward me, and I saw Chris's face stretched in its mass, his eyes suddenly focusing on mine with recognition. In that moment, I made my choice. I let go of the shelf and allowed the threshold to pull me forward, not to be claimed by the entity but to pass through to the other side, where perhaps I could find those who had been taken, where perhaps there was a way back that didn't involve letting these horrors into our world. As I fell into the blackness, time seemed to slow. I saw Leonard running toward me, Diane appearing behind him. I saw the ceiling beginning to crack as the charges detonated. I saw the entity being compressed and drawn back into the void along with me. And then I was through, falling into a space beyond understanding. I don't know how to describe where I am now. It's not a physical place in any sense that humans would comprehend. There are no walls or floors or ceilings, no up or down. There is light, but no source for it. There are sounds, but they come from everywhere and nowhere. And there are others here. Chris, Monica, dozens more who were taken over the years. They exist in a strange half-state, neither fully conscious nor truly gone. I've learned things in this place, terrible truths about the entities in their world, about why they want to cross over. Our reality is vibrant, dynamic, and rich with energy. Theirs is fading, dying, the last embers of a universe approaching heat death. And they don't take faces as trophies. They take them to remember what it was like to have form, definition, and identity. They are ancient beyond understanding, the last survivors of a reality nearly exhausted. But most importantly, I've learned that my mother was right. Thresholds work both ways. Being caught between worlds doesn't mean being trapped forever, it means having access to both sides. The Walmart is gone, collapsed into rubble that was later cleared away and paved over as a parking lot for a new strip mall. The threshold remains, but it's sealed more effectively than before, buried under concrete and steel and tar. Yet there are other thresholds, other hollow grounds where the veil thins. Places where those caught between might find their way back if they're ever clever and determined enough. I'm searching for one now, gathering the scattered consciousness of Chris and the others as I go. I will find a way to bring us home. So if you work in retail, especially the night shift, pay attention to the rules that they give you. They might seem strange, arbitrary, and even silly, but follow them anyway. Because some stores are built on the wrong ground, and some places should have been left hollow, and some entities are still hungry for new faces to remember. Damon McCory, Rain, Big Country Allen, Jerry Ramey, Dino, Decky, MP Massacre 91, Nelson Asada, Die Screaming, Meat Gasher, Justin